The Dustin Mark Poems, 1 through 100. 100 poems that no longer need to be written. By Dustin Mark. Forward. Months prior to the publication of this collection, I was confined to a basement against my will for 23 days. I had just enough resources to survive: a toilet and a sink, minimal food, some drinks, some drugs, and a lot of feelings. I had my phone and computer, but had left the chargers in my car, which was obviously not with me in the basement. Before the deaths of each, I was able to signal for help by releasing an emergency podcast episode and reaching out to some local friends and acquaintances. But by that time, my listenership had dwindled, as had my list of contacts who took me seriously, or, as I was to find out, cared if I lived or died. Left with little beyond my own thoughts, I became intimate with the best and worst of myself. And while perhaps one day I may chronicle the basement journey in literal terms, it is only fitting now to leave it to the pages before you. As down in the basement, it felt to me that the only resource I had was my words. Words that, to my surprise, allowed me to flourish. A long, dormant lever within me switched on a gear that turned all my agony and fear and anger and everything else into poetry. The poetry gave me purpose. It allowed me to process and to accept. It saved me. On the 24th day I was released, bail paid by a benefactor still unknown. Packing my belongings into my car and making no contact with my captor, I emerged from the basement. These poems came from the most intense and confusing time of my life, each one with its own deep personal meaning. Many of them written in captivity and many written as a newly free man rediscovering himself. The joining together of them all creates something as alive as I am, an indomitable tale of survival, a roller coaster of the human spirit, an open vein, all for the world to not just read, but to feel. Although it came together over the course of about 6 short weeks, it is my life's work. Cooper Street. On my way to school, I stop and wave hello to July, who lives below me and knows more than I ever could. She's judged me a time or two in ways I wouldn't have, but what July does is rooted in what July knows. I say goodbye and walk down to the train station, passing a stream of Julys and a world of lessons. Poet. In many regards, I've thought of myself as a one and only, or, under the occasional influence of humility, a member of an elite consortium accessible only via the lattice backs and heads of the usable and the weak. It is now blindingly obvious that I, beyond any accolade and massage or empire I've built within the confines of an ever-evaporating moat, am one of nearly 8 billion poets, and singular though I may be, I can be no greater or more important than my union. Our gardens are the opposite of each other's gardens. Your garden has tulips and lilies. Mine has the opposite. Your garden has radishes and turnips. Mine has the opposite. Your plants are pruned. Mine are the opposite. You tend to your garden every morning at roughly 9 a.m. I do the opposite. You forecast the coming days. I do the opposite. You map out seasonal changes for your garden. I do the opposite. You pray each night before you go to sleep. I do the opposite. You remind those you love of your love, and you mean it. I do the opposite. You see beyond your own garden. I do the opposite. Vitruvian baby. Limbs akimbo. The baby who does not hear me is not alone. He is the baby, if there ever was one, who will listen, but he does not hear me still. I see in him a child, for this is what he is. I see in him a generation, for this is who he is. I see in him a movement, for this is what he represents. He sees in me silence. We speak not different languages, but in foreign frequencies. I draw in chalk a circle around the boy and take the stairs to the balcony above, distancing myself from his budding featurettes, able now to see him in the bigger picture. From this far above, I know he cannot hear me, but as I hold the rail in front of me and see the baby in the expanse, it never occurs to me to be anything but silent. Kern. The man upstairs is kerning me. He separates me from all the parts that make me who I am until I am unrecognizable, until the space between what makes me me is greater than anything I could claim to be. He unpeels the Velcro from my life preserver and conducts the deliberate spread of my pieces. His forceps affixed to his bloodied hands, his fingertips otherwise occupied with some deranged else mangling. He removes my soul with precision and stores it in a bell jar to die. As I spread further and further apart, my connective tissue looks for a new home and begins a march toward the room of jars, slipping under doors and through crevices where, with one daggering touch, it will vaporize the glass captors, not just of me, but a city of the fooled, and compress me back to my earthly form, now with a greater sense of what it means to take up space. The man upstairs will breathe the glass vapors in his sleep, and will wonder from where these pangs which spread him come. Where valleys are not. I search and follow and track my steps, but only ever end up where the valleys are not. I use clean energy to get there. I use my feet and my eyelids. But when I arrive, I am where you know me from, and nowhere else. With nothing to fall from and nowhere to hide, I again defer my grief. Kanki. I was no stranger to an obsession, to dependence on a secret, and listening hours that grew to take over the day. I presented at the front of my range, far from my base, but connected unduly to my still-growing heart. I owed and protected, one of us, and recorded for later dismay a seminar on the mantle of the amateur. To look back and deny what was true, well, it's an awful precedent, so don't bother. Of the few flavors of shame, you know it's the denial you find the most bitter, but you still can't stop yourself from spitting the rest out. And in the spring, when all your misdeeds are freshest, and you haven't made promises, but whatever you've made feels a lot like promises, laying there on the mantle. Maybe you have no tale to tell, accustomed as you are to listening and pretending, to skirting and hedging. But your hour is here, parked and reparked, on a stage most unwelcome and bizarre, yet safer than you could have dreamt. The logic and masquerade you'd answered to only are asleep by mercy of tonight's distasteful jockey, not forever, unless you so choose. You could never. Right? You will. You don't know yet, but it seems you could never. This night in the swamp might even be the turnstile, but if you keep it locked, it's just a locked gate. You are the cynosure. You think you don't know why. You know why. Your brute sincerity and your abject friendom. You know who you are. You're reminded by yourself, and some perceptive others.
You know what you are, and it is not what you do. You are not what you do. Perhaps. There have been promises. There have been tears and admissions. There have been moments greater than any moments you've known. The swamp is thick and dim. It's so much darker when you refuse to open your eyes. The seams you feared, there are none. The safety measures, we're far too gone for those to work. You're not alone, you think? And you know exactly why. Beyond that, you know it shouldn't matter. And beyond that, you're not alone. You won't drown tonight, but you could find another way to suffocate. You think it's absurd to recycle this late. Cue the cosmic mirror. It's okay to be afraid, but you know why you're not alone. So maybe save the fear for that. But not yet. You've been reliable, with maybe 2 exceptions. Yet somehow tonight is no surprise. You were bred for different games. They know this. You've been reliable. They know this. There in the dark, which really isn't all that dark, your utility is put to the test, and the results are there on the mantle, unopened. No need to open if we know what's inside. Save your energy and focus on all the misdeeds the spring will inspire. You're not alone, but you're not certain. In 1,000 or so retellings, you'll know for sure, and you'll feel the same nothing at all of relief. My cloud. Like so much else, the sun is not a monolith. That we can see it soaring across the sky does not mean it isn't also on the train, en route to a 4 p.m. class in a building with east-facing windows. When the clouds do triumph and the isolated shadows make way for a full slate of shadows, you still put to shame the natural shade and send it running home, or at least into the arms of the non-believers and out of favor whose cynicisms would dissipate in the time it takes the inimitable rays of you to reach their dusty corners. Ben Factory James. Alone and insane, Ben Factory James has no one to blame, has no love to feign. Alone and insane, Ben Factory James has no one to blame but himself. Alone in his brain, Ben Factory James, a merchant of pain, became his own bane. His efforts in vain, Ben Factory James remembers and promptly forgets. Ben Factory James abandons this rhyme scheme and pattern in efforts to sway the opinions of those whom he believes control his future, which he believes because he lets it be so. Alone is more than a state of mind. Dinners and dates and Decembers pass by, his lumbering conscience, and he can no longer be sure he's done digging a grave for his nobodies. Alone and insane, Ben Factory James watches the moon wax, watches the moon wane. Alone and insane, inept and inane, Ben Factory James starts anew. Biggins. Not fair to say I'm haunted by these biggins, unless we rarely mind a haunting, in which case, is it a haunting at all? I know all the ways to hide and days to take, and I can influence the natural color schemes. I'm no iris, but I know myself enough. By now the biggins function in repose, as I do my best to keep the blanket tight. They vibrate and puff, and there's no one the wiser. But if I dare Slayton, they'll jump out of bed, servile and grotesque, and prepared with lessons in contrast.
My bed's a radio. You may doubt, but my bed's a radio. I can change between many frequencies and listen in to personalities and tastes from all over the world, alone in bed with no company, though it feels like I hold the keys to a rocket ship that can take me anywhere. I deboard and live within a sample of culture previously unknowable to me. Reboard, take a flight to a new location, and again become a native to a place I'd only dreamt of before getting in bed and closing my eyes to listen to the marvelous sounds of this great world. Lees. When what you think you need might not be what you need, but might well be what you need still, there's Lees. When you're out and losing and the stars are too clear, and you've spent too much time looking up anyway, there's Lees. When you're punch drunk and unamused, or your knuckles are bloodied and bruised and unfaithful, there's Lees. CNSC yells. No. 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 For the life of me, no. No, no. 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 Love, I have to question why you're here, but please don't question me. No. 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 I have judged and I regret, and for that reason... No. Venetian Daisy. I turned the corner at the salon and there you were. By now I know how to gawk carefully, but sometimes there can be no protection against the initial and unexpected woes. We know each other to degrees. I do find it's your mystery that somehow clues me in more, and while you wear what they wear, you wear it with deliberate force. And you say my name. By now you know how to say it, and my public execution is underway. My last words, Daisy. My last meal, one long puff of your air. It may not be filling, but I've been full before, and these days I prefer to starve. I haven't been this hungry in ages, so say my name again and promise to be right back. I know you will, but the chance of a broken promise is the hurt I need tonight. Not my stomach eating itself again, not the sympathy pains for your aching feet. These pains are nothing compared to what I can see with my closed eyes. Maybe Penny at the Dorsey can pry my eyes open until one of us is proven right. Or one of the Argentines in the noodle room watching horses. I do doubt it, though. Daisy guards the lever, and I cruelly schedule another shift. Belgium. My friend from Belgium drinks too much and is very happy. In Belgium, we stay active and we say what we think. I like the second part, but the first feels unnecessary. Activity for the sake of it? Get your blood pumping, Dustin. Your body will thank you. He finishes his pint. I'd been waiting for him to do so. The next round's on him. He returns and I ask him if his Belgian honesty ever hurts people. Yes, but no more than your American repressions. We clink our glasses, and he winks at the lady 2 stools to his left. She sends back a quarter smile and looks down at her phone. I think I'd like to live in Belgium. One of 100,000 billion poems. At noon or so I sang with Billy Books. We drank the lemon watershed, one each. He searched the crannies and I searched the nooks. He stormed with ease the bays I could not breach. I lit my twig and blew the night away. Billy strolled down the adjacent alley. The storm clouds gave maps to lead him astray. I summoned him back for the finale. Crooning, he did show off his baritone. I snatched the music, threw it asunder. He hovered in an unusual zone and showed up the accompanying thunder. Rain swallowed us whole and Billy went pale. I reset my soul as rain became hail. Dream Gyoza, New you. All this fucking noise, 5 years of build-up, culminating in rock and roll, go figure. Yes, freedom smells fresh, not salty, which is of course where you're wrong. But the fresh smell is so distracting and intoxicating that you're, dare we say, not yourself? No, you never were. But here you are, and with the freshwater smell, you have rotten plants and wood, and all of a sudden the noise is gone. There, ahead, not touchable, but take a few steps and we'll see, is the prototypical gyoza. And there, in your shoes, is the prototypical you. Doc and Diggy. Doc Prévert and Diggy Sweets, the latter whom you may know from that night you failed to erase, and the former from the morning after, agree on the whats, but not the hows. Diggy never met a dream writer he couldn't corrupt, and Doc calls all his meals breakfast. The two of them are a mighty team, one without a coach and without a uniform. It is their unmatched trappings that some credit their ability to disorient. Diggy dazes like none other, and if you let him, Doc sits you down and retells the tale. If Diggy sounds different in Doc's recital, you're not alone. Diggy has an uncanny ability to change in others' recall, and Doc, one to hold your hand in the muddle. Duello. I played Limit Hold'em with Neymar. The cabra didn't recognize the cabra in me. He open raises and chews on his wood. I call. He will only know me as a man in a hat. He c-bets. Bah. I call and suppress my bleeding. If you play back at Neymar, he will respond in kind. But now is not the time to teach him his lesson. He eats his weeds and burps. We will let him do whatever he wants. He may be the cabra, but I am the man evolved. E eu não temo nada. I tip the dealer and hold in another bleat. Blue. Blue isn't the only warm color. Sometimes I can't be sure it's even the warmest. In fact, lately I've felt no heat at all, and my eyes are blue, and so are my interior walls. The siege continues in the cold. The general leads the charge, clad in cerulean, and the Iranian gimps follow in rows of 3 and 4. The onlookers in sapphire and ruddy take notes in their journals, in cobalt ink. I've lived my life this way for 37 years, and I've found less heat and fire and less in Tiffany than in the soil outside my bedroom window, which the morning waters and which scare my once-bitten hands. As the robin flies and lays, the general is days away, but the robin has the luxury of air and branches, and the general, if he's ever been bitten at all, must approach through my soil. Sometimes, in my Capri nightmares, I bury myself alive and I don't know why. We continue on page 36. IPA. I is for the ifs made happen by your wings. P is for the providence of your ice-cold cascade streams. A is for awaken as you do to my dormant soul. B is for bon temps, which you always make sure roll. E's are the elation and euphoria you dole when R, another round, makes its way into my soul. My fingers print. Since 20 I've made my way, and no other way, by tickling the ivory-laden walking calendar I'm chained to, pinky by pinky, thumb to thumb. Nimble and slick, I scratch and grasp, I tease and apply pressure, delicate and indelicate in every arena. I twist and crack and prop myself up. Having folded down my sheets, I spring in any which direction. I produce from thin air. The wind and the contours make all the difference. If you look closely, you'll see the vast canyons, and if you look too closely, you'll miss it entirely. I will deftly print in excess, and you might wonder if I need all of this, but to question me now would be so far off that you'd miss the show. You don't want to miss the show. The tickets are there under your name. But you've already paid and you've made tough decisions before, so really it's all up to you. Mick Manners. The rings of Christ and Celt, the freshly clipped nails, the prehistoric wristwatch, the merkins and the veils, the alabaster molehills that guard the fiery sin, the rioter can riot on without ever breaking in. The passers-by think little of a slapping on these grounds. The gradients ingrained itself and redesigned the mounds. The canvas, once it's signed, will return to who knows where, with invisible memories and quite visible wear.
From my years in
hell. Down in hell's patisserie, we learned to smoke cigarettes with our feet. I worked front of house. Welcome, you'll be seated shortly. Puff. Our hands full of gravy and our mouths full of heavy gravy. We were resigned to offer only what we could not provide. Your waiter this afternoon is named Itzabel. She'll go over the soups and specials. In the meantime, you're free to let your minds wander. Puff. Cough. On my lunch breaks, I used to chip away at my calloused kneecaps. When the break ended, I'd reapply the callous residue. I'd need play for tomorrow's break. Now and then, a diner might grieve. Any day now, or bland. And I'd put on my vest and look to find some famous cure somewhere in the diner's doldrums. You'll be pleased to know the chef has been punished for bland. Puff. UWSBG. My colleagues, safe by now to call them friends, fold and hang the denims as I prepare a seasonal display for the newest citizens of the world by way of this sleepless island. How lucky these children to be born into the vibrant array of life and love we get to call our home, and I the opportunity to set them up for all the successes they can dream of. They know not yet what they deserve, but in time they'll learn of the many lessons that to present yourself in a manner that mirrors the soul will engender you connections to other souls with matching proclivities to always be themselves.
The nurse
in the room. There's always a nurse in the room. Anywhere you go, be assured, truly be assured. For in the corner is the nurse. The nurse eats like us and drinks like us and thinks of us as we think of ourselves, but without knowing our sins and stains. Or so I used to think. But the closer I get to the nurse and the more time I spend at the nurse's mend, the more time I realize it is not that the nurse doesn't know our sins and stains, but doesn't care. I-15. You can find the best and worst of humanity at 68 miles per hour. Look to the left, look to the right, peek through the rearview mirror. Miracles on the run and body swamps in still motion. It is a free museum. You pass a million windows, and again you look to the left, and you look to the right, and you capture, In one window, a million tales and a million motives, and all the while, whether you look to the left or to the right or ahead, you are captured too. Captured, not captive. The eyes won't remind you, but you can remember now and again to remind yourself. You are free. On the floor. It's not that Gaines doesn't trust me. He doesn't trust the times or the genes. He doesn't trust his own chin, and he knows his chin will anchor to the sort of responsible facade only a decades-long mistake can sustain. He unlocks the door and I take no offense. Next week he'll unlock the door and I'll take no offense. And when he sleeps, dreaming of my relocation, for now at least, I will fulfill my nascent hopes and teenage headaches, and will dream of him too. A kiss of brown. As the great and misunderstood monster I've grown to love with my whole heart walks near, I invite him up with me where I sleep, knowing it is not my space nor his space. The beast and I share a look, and I vow to him that what is not mine may be ours. He leaps, and I remember how he used to fly. He lands, and I am better for his brute, encompassing nearness to me. He plants on something neither his nor mine a kiss of brown. There is no denying at any moment until our time ends that the monster was here, and so was I. Funk late. I park my car and check to make sure I have my usual pocket arrangement. If I didn't, I'd just as soon go back home. Not back, exactly. To set myself up as I please, then enter with unfamiliar weight. I'm already 35 minutes tardy, or is it more? Once I clocked the inevitability of my lateness, I wrote off any guilt that may try to sneak in through my ears. Gregory, or Schedulus, or any of the mythic gods of other people's time will not bring me down now, and I can only suspect never worked under the auspices of a generous and irreverent lover, and I'm sure cracked the whip on servants and slaves whom had been busy exploring and knowing and licking and convulsing within each other, barely to notice the sting of the nine tails for the holy glow of their spirits. Branches. The day before the hurricane, the diners across from us made sure they had the freshest lemons. We laughed, either at their folly and bravado or at the earnestness of their desires. We couldn't be sure. When hell spat up its breakfast and locked us inside, we thought it might be like the time the bad men from the biscuit store tried to remap our city overnight and we missed school for 3 days while the authorities made sure the streets were in the right places. But now, on the first night, as we're left sleeping in our own sweaty residue and our pillows smell like strangers, it is clear this time is different. After a night and 2 days, I walked down the street. I couldn't scratch myself as I needed to, and I took photos of the moon through the resilient lushery. The photos came out blurry, every single one, and I was forced to question if I'd been paying attention. The neighbors made lemonade for the community. I sipped and was reminded of the diners I'd laughed at, and thought for a moment, maybe I shouldn't have.
Someone feed
Demeter. She stands, she stares, and she's looking at you, friend. With no recognizable emotion, she surveys the one great field we've made home. Demeter, our darling, shoos us away, for our souls are made of sin and our footsteps are screaming into the plan. Fuck you! Fuck you! We can take off our sandals and socks, but our feet will cry just as loud, and Demeter doesn't need the noise today. My destructive habits and your destructive habits, and indeed their destructive habits too, can be muted. They still scream silently and tense visibly and wag their fingers and show their fists, but for a moment or two we give Mother the quiet she needs to engage. She steps weightlessly over a great field, and in each stride a lifetime of amends. Our amends, begged for and unwillingly given, will do wonders for everything we cannot see. Lager. Down the hatch, down with the seeds and the rye beams. Down where yesterday's merchants are today's benefactors. Down where the acids won't allow for just any old creature to survive. Down goes the lager, speeding. Down it goes, and there stays some, so down goes more for an extra push. My top cheeks are all of a sudden engaged in some fitness video from the 90s or so, and my eyelids flare at what amazes. That on tape 2, but we're not on tape 2 yet, so they flare out of time and protect the crooked, gimmicky, hobbled, but not ineffectual brown eyes behind. Down goes the lager, watering the indoor garden I've been cultivating, perfectly ruining my sowed. As if I'd taken steps for anything but ruin tonight. Down with the integrity and verve, down where you can tell I've been practicing, and you wouldn't know it until now. But now the lager has gone down, so up go I. Sis. Fuzzy fuckets and double-deviled drum beats, phased-out shriekers and high school dropouts, nights and mornings, one and the same. It can take forever to write a song or forever to live one. The choice is yours. Distorted reality for distorted boys, Psycho-Cola and Marsigliano's sewage bloodstream. Neighbor pleads and border drive riffs, surgeries we don't know we need. There's no such thing as a solo down here, not if you're never alone.
Third row
Good'uns. Good'uns in the third row. I'm meant to be watching baseball? I'm scheduled to be bonding with such and such man from such and such a memory? I spot the Good'uns as I always do, and I have no memories of anything beyond the twitch of the eye that steered me to this fatty graveyard where I meant to die a brilliant death, a motionless, obsessive death like the ones my friends drew up. I catch myself remembering those friends and our fantastic remedies to the days we were living, and I refocus to the Good'uns and briefly, if feeling like forever, lose all my senses. Purple. Maybe if God mixed up the mountains and the forests, the oceans and the dells, we'd have an orb of lush purple rather than the segregated blues and greens and browns. Take every breath and breather, every creation, human and divine, and swirl it all up in the blender of heaven, and the world as we know it would transform into rich fuchsia. It must be so. Of every smoothie I've ever had, with all the produce and sun-soaked harvests I've been privy to, and all the nutrients and fertility God blessed us with, the purest, most beautiful, life-affirming sips I've taken have been purple. It is the holy color. The natural color. It is the only color capable of satiating these human cravings that feel so insatiable. All of the love and kindness and innovation we felt and will ever feel, all swirled up in the blender of heaven, is purple. Nani Moon. Under the suffocating watch of the Nani Moon, it does not matter that I have no food. I couldn't swallow if I wanted to. She peeks through my window during the witching hour. I know you're watching! I am not asleep yet! I yell at her with my eyes. She knows and holds her gaze. Something about the night's blanketing black puts the hunger pains at ease, but her glow prods them, and again I feel the empty fire. Earlier today, my chocolate survival kit brought back the dead and made me friends with the unstill carpet, but now the dead have returned to death, and the carpet I can now see by the encroaching moonbeam. has settled. I attempt one deep breath which I cannot complete. How I wish she'd hide away again and take with her all these damning reminders.
Erie Coast.
On a good morning, of which we'll have 9 or 12 a year, I'd walk down to the Erie shore, where the wind could harm me but wouldn't, where the fish could nip me but didn't, where I could picture myself, finally, as a man. Some of my friends, the shorter ones, befriended the mollusks, and in the distance we could hear the changing laws, for better and worse, and watch the erection of the promised P&P. On a really good morning, which I only ever dreamed of, I could swim for an hour or so and dry out on an island I was sure to find. Inventory. A liar, a monster, a difficult and frustrating wretch, an obsessive fool, an unreasonable fool, a lecher, a binger, a blind, a lush and a trespasser, a false gargoyle, a true voodooist, a glass of cursed petroleum, a never-ending storm, a futile levee, a descending staircase leading to a pit of agony, and below that, a pit of nothing.
The Purple Man.
The Purple Man. Prince of sex. I like to understand the sounds he makes, but I do not. I'm left listening and not enjoying what I can tell is powerful and resonant. I see him dance around and make sinners of the throngs of women whose belly devils hear his guitar siren and begin the transformation into full-fledged freaks. Refreshments. She sold strawberries and bananas. I witnessed this. She shielded her eyes from the sun. I witnessed this. She lasered in with aplomb. I witnessed this. She will forget the people, but not what they mean, I predict. She stayed by me, relatively. I witnessed this. She fought with and for commerce. I witnessed this. She knew better than suffer flattery. I witnessed this. She could have been 19 or 28. I found it hard to tell. Rapid neck. I'd have been sure she had left the oven on had she not stuck around to use the toilet after and watch an episode of some reality show. No, I'd never placed value or merit on stopwatch beeps, but I might have been alone in that. And I think my company was slow to even having to counteract my fear, let's call it, of the purchase of this endeavor. Holy hell, I might have said. I can't be sure if I was audible, but the sentiment was true either way. She was pure mercury, and she moved with agility no pill I've tried can inspire, in possession and in rapture. Neither of us were ourselves. She, a merchant of Chemical Express, and I, formerly in disrepair, pushing and pulling, and discovering limits. Jojoba oil. Gather round, come collect the sheen, swim in a droplet of the divine, all of you. There's plenty to go round. Bring Granny and the whore, tell the neighbors and their loner son of the news. The sun and moon and earth have teamed up for this one-time offer, and you, yes you, can gain and glisten and glow. Nitimur invitetem. Yes, but today only. You are permitted. Take a vial, pass it around. Boys and girls and all people alike can become more human. If for a moment, then for a moment. If on isolated terms, then on isolated terms. Human is human. The skin is a shrewd gatekeeper, but even on the shrewdest day is brought to you by the makers of the same sieve you've used your entire life. Act now, and you will be now. Wait, and never know. Patio Monster. They call me the Patio Monster because I will patrol your patio and dominate as you've seen no one dominate before. The floor is mine. In this hand I hold 2 beers, in the other I hold court, as my gaze is held by all the beauties your friends and theirs think belong to anyone else. I am the Patio Monster, and with a few scant drops of sweat descending my forehead, I look the part of a working man. The patio prince may dress to the nines, but this monster shows his work, and with everyone asking for another story, and the neighbors coming over to schedule me for their soiree next month, you can be sure your girl is watching, scoping out an opportunity to stroke the monster's beard and lick the sweat off his brow. They don't teach you about salt addiction in school, but she'll soon learn. Maybe you can get her to explain it to you.
The world and the world's friends.
The world's friends.
The world needs friends.
The world needs friends. When I go to Brooklyn, I visit my favorite pho shop. Only sometimes will I stop to eat, but always will say hello. Keeping a community intact takes effort and kindness, and you don't have to eat or slurp to be a friend. Hanukkah isn't spelled like this. Happy Hanukkah! We spell it this way in our house, and from our house to yours shall it be happy our way. Your H's are twee and telling. You are what we think you to be. Sure, our houses smell the same and we love the same rules, and your banners rejoice our commonalities, hugs and kisses, candy and sweets, war and fire, wetness and time. But your banners are mirrors, your streamers failing marks. You're a Western delegate in a Western world, and history means to you nothing. Culture means to you not enough. Heritage, you remember? It's okay, we can adapt. No, we can grow. We can forget and abuse. We can bastardize and ruin. You can delegate. It's what you do so well. From the windows in our house we can see your parties. Your joy is so obvious and beautiful, and your traditions are so tightly wrapped, we almost forget who makes your revisionist bows. We are brothers and sisters.
We are more than neighbors. When it's time to move out, I hope you realize who must lead. We are what we are. Big bowl of spaghetti. When Peter knocks on my door, I will tell him to wait. I am not ready. I do not wish to go yet. I have other plans. Big bowl of spaghetti. Knock, knock. Again. The door is locked? It's barred with a magic charm. I'm occupied, Pete, so let me enjoy my own heaven as I prepare my big bowl of spaghetti. Your espousal to Providence is cute and not lost on me, but Providence is a monolith knot. Forgive me, this step, as all are, is part of the magic. I will leave willingly, I promise. I have no intention of fighting what I've worked so hard to reach. But, Peter, please regard me as part of your dominion, an infant, an expert. I've put the same sweat and love into this big bowl of spaghetti that I've put into my application and audition tape. So please, Peter, amuse yourself for an hour, or what time it takes for me to finally, crucially, enjoy this big bowl of spaghetti. Claudinia. Young and lovely, the Swedish girl transcends heights and fairness. She digs through her pockets, endless aren't they, and exhumes handfuls of live kindness. Her moniker is never in doubt. It wouldn't be a sin not to smile around her, rather it's impossible. And should you do the impossible, I'm sure she'd marvel, as she's not yet jaded by human discovery. The gold that traces her ears, real or not, is priceless, as are her inks and leathers. She'll see you every time, and to be seen this way, you'd be left questioning a life's worth of parents and teachers who hid from you this sense, impractical and addictive. The ibises. Step 1. You say we need to talk, but don't you think we've talked enough? I've heard the points you've made, and still you feel unheard. Is it my words you need? Have you heard me? When we used to fight, it felt like the Renaissance. It felt like Messana. Now, in this rain, we are the ibises looking for shelter. I've kept you dry 300 and 500 weeks, and you shake as if you're sogged. Tell me why I shiver. We need to talk? You still say we need to talk? Your anger can be senseless and true, but it is not. Your anger guides only your cracking bones, all the way to Ragusa, where you knew I wouldn't be. You still say we need to talk. Lord, grant me strength to hold this umbrella forevermore. For birds like this, grant me the courage to collapse it and watch the beaked scorner learn of its waxes. "9:30. The junction before us, it's not time to decide yet, but a decision wouldn't hurt. I thought there were strings wrapped around us, but there are only strings wrapped around me. They're not very strong. I could break them if I wanted to match you. Your friends in the basement read science fiction. I read the absurd and French. Is that okay? One of us has made all the right decisions, and one of us has a mug full of Merlot, which drains and refills 3 or 4 times before dinner. I'm not good at art, for lack of a better term for whatever it is you do, but perhaps you're not good at it either. And on balance, we're good at the same things. Again, we don't have to decide yet, and I take back what I just said about you not being good at what you do. I apologize. I get a little anxious waiting around. I don't even know what time it is. What's it, like 9:30?
I
dreamt an icery. To the theorists and scholars who call our dreams amalgams of our periphery sites, the back-to-fore reordering of our hyper-observant subconscious, I ask, when oh when did I spy an icery? Because I dreamt an icery. I dreamt an icery and do dream an icery most nights. An icery. A singular, the same, fleshly unknown. I dreamt and dream an icery. Working, living within, living my work within, working my life within. I create in dreams with ice, and preserve and destroy. I am most elements, but not all. And in the icery I dream I am the purest me, until I melt and reform into an impurity, only to sculpt myself anew. Durian Wedding. The bride waits in her very last cage, dressed in beautiful scallion and pearl, preparing for the sacred embrace she'll die in, for better or for worse. She checks her chin in the mirror and is looking lambent in the dim, soggy chamber. 3 walls away, the groom, putting his Sunday best to shame, pre-boils his tears and looks at his watch, which he'll have to get fixed for running this slow. The pews are packed with friends and ghosts and figurines, each of their hearts filled with love and gratitude. The rear door opens, the 6 flower girls holding up their matrimonious tray. They proceed into the cafetorium. Only 3 steps in, and the first 2 rows suddenly have things to consider. The girls retain their pace, advancing down the tile. A man in the 5th row back murmurs, "Jesus, what?" before he is shushed by the woman he's paid to accompany him. The fumes are intensifying as the little ladies enter a more central space. The audience by now is tear-filled, mostly, even before they've borne witness to the prize of love's hunt. A little boy, not 7 years old, looks up to his chaperone. "Mommy, it smells so bad." Mommy looks down at the boy and pats his head. "I know, boy, I know." As she guides his eyes back to the altar, more than a dozen onlookers have quelled their sickness by plugging their noses with their own fingers. They forget that their tongues are capable of smell as well and close their mouths as soon as they are reminded. The cavalcade approaches the groom, whose heart is gyrating at yet unregistered tempos. They stop before him, the tray rested on their shoulders, roughly belly height now. He looks into the blaze and for a moment loses himself in a reverie. He used to eat graham cracker and mallow and chocolate snacks at his friend's lake house on some summer nights, and in this flame he sees the entire Krugman family seated round. He comes to, focused, and mightily inhales. His audience by now are queasy and unsettled, save for the despondent few who, on a daily basis, experience worse. The groom empties his lungs, catapulting forward an ocean of air, unassuming in sight, but mighty. So mighty the flaming fruit cannot resist. The flame quivers, reignites, quivers further, and dies. The audience, in shock, makes no sound, and those taking active measures of defense realize they must up their efforts. The groom coughs a tiny cough, and the now fresh little girls retreat with their tray of burnt fruit, back down the tiled walkway, through the double doors, through the veranda, and into the jungle. The cage door opens with help from some extinct magic, and the bride makes her way to the atrium. She appears at the entryway of the cafetorium and stops. The party of onlookers have been abused, but find the strength to look up at the bride's stunning visage. She parades down the aisle, and somehow the sense memories of a hellish overture are forgotten as she makes her way towards her destiny.
Age. Last week I used a 9-year-old Blistex, and my lips wouldn't have known had someone not slipped them a note. I puckered and patted, soft as ever, and wondered what it means to expire. I will expire, I know, like my grandparents have, and I've seen the effects of time on bread and cheese, but have only ever seen these effects, just as I only ever saw my grandparents and never was them. Foreign to me is the ill-advised cross of line, where I, indignant, defy the warnings, the scientists, the instincts. I never ate the moldy cheese. but I must infer that Cheese and I are the same, or of the same at least, and while we go bad at different rates, we do go bad. In the spirit of this, I dig out photos of my grandparents, who I knew but never was, and kiss the prints with my healthy lips, none the wiser. The Pope. The big man is made of glass, and his little boy assistants have strict diets. Nothing red, nothing blue. On the big man's order, 2 assistants take 1 bike to the hardware bazaar to steal a can of graffiti remover. Meanwhile, the chef prepares more tuna than anyone has ever seen. The boys return on bike, lock bike, remove shoes, don robes. One heads to the south bathroom to grab a bag of razor blades, and one heads to the west bathroom to pee. They each succeed and reconvene in the big man's stripy room. There he is in undress, exposing hours of art he'd slept through the application of. The boys begin to scrape away at the unwelcome swirls and illegible words, while the rest of the assistants sit in the kitchen, eating their grains and awaiting their moment to shine. The Seduction of Dustin
The
S.
Seduction of
Mark.
Dustin S. Mark.
I can seduce the youth with my confidence, and I can seduce the mature with my drive, but I cannot seduce myself. My printing prowess and self-esteem are terrifying on a phone screen, or in the back seat of the car of that girl on that tennis team, and the general attitude proves specific results, but alone, when the mask has gone stale and cracked into 25 pieces, maybe more, this looks closer to 40 or 45. This own air of mine disgusts me, and I gag and sneeze looking at the irreparable mess I've made, and I gag and sneeze once I've cleaned up, shaming myself for calling this clean. Jart. Some square pegs fit in round holes, and some do not. That's the way it goes. Squares are rectangles, but only some rectangles are squares. They teach us this and hope it sticks, and it does stick. After dinner is time to fit everything together. Everything. And anyone who doesn't do this is, in a nutshell, behind the curve. Come to think of it, everything must fit together then, and no later. No later. There are plates of Jell-O for those who finish. 1 plate for each. There should be no leftovers. No leftovers. 1 or 2 of the players appear to be stuck. They should be reminded that rectangles can be other things too.
Virtuous Dennings.
The litter plopped into life about an hour ago. I watched the tired and wet mom count them, and I counted them a few times myself. Is this what you expected? I thought to her. Would you ever have guessed? She licked them 1 by 1. 2 licks for some, actually, and a third for one, which might have been accidental. She licked Spyro and Master. She licked Ken and Larry. She licked Ripper and Trunch. She licked Rango and Shane. And she gave an extra long lick to Virtuous. The new blob slept. Actually, it's hard to tell if they slept or not. They occupied the brand of time in life when alive means asleep and awake at once, and dreamed, or did not, and for the first time felt the zesty air. Mom tongued Virtuous again on the left ear, where the hearing was soon to begin. Virtuous kept sleeping or being awake, either for the very first time. There was plenty of cleanup to do, but I decided it would be best to leave it to Mom. I considered she had enough to worry about, but I remembered how personal I find a mess. Hemingway. Ernest. My gran almost mated with Hemingway, according to her records. She came close, and might have done had she not had certain preferences I ought not to disclose. Maybe a younger gran, still finding herself, would have chosen difference and denied me this life.
The favorite book paradox.
I have a favorite book, do you? Do you have a favorite book too? Does one book do what none else do and leave you in wonder through and through? I have a favorite book, it's true. I love it so much, and in lieu of recommending items few, I give it out. I've lost a few. Who owns my favorite book? Guess who? It might be you and it might be you. For I brought it up, which might ensue, I've gifted it into your queue. It's true, I must renew my ownership of this book brand new. Missing from my shelf, it gives the view quite an uncharacteristic skew. I've read my favorite book, too many times, a slew. I have to say it's overdue, a new copy I come into. I gave one to the ingenue, so she could read it while ill with flu. I gave one to a boy named Sue, who needed something better to do. I gave one to my friend Andrew, who read it in his new canoe. You may read it in the loo, or bring it to a barbecue. Or any place you're passing through, almost any place will do. I've given it to all my crew, I felt dutiful to imbue. For now my bookshelf must make do, at least until I do endue it with this wonderful bijou, from which my love for reading grew. I do not own my favorite book, it's true. I've spent years trying to eschew depriving peers of what is due, a perfect book to leisure through. I really should buy copies too, I really should spare this ado, and save myself a copy to always be able to review.
Mall sadness.
Sadness. I cannot occupy 1,000,000 square feet. I cannot fly and I cannot float. And besides, the air above us is full of evaporated tears and bad breath, and I'd choose to fly outside if given the choice. The space I can walk back and forth down the promenade of 200 different visions is full of the corrupted and the scared. I bump into one and am shoved, as if any of this were up to me. There on a bench is a cousin of the occupying maladies, and a few seats down from him is an empty cup, once full of frozen yogurt, now as engaged in the trendy discourse as any of its fellow congregants. I step into the nearest portal and witness live the resistanceless indoctrination of some Carl and some Kevin. Libby with the mayo. Tell them. Tell them! Tell them how you like it. Nobody knows how you like it but you. Tell them pour it on. Tell them spread it. Tell them you need a little extra. You need a little extra. Tell them the time you want it hot. You know the time you want it hot. Tell them if something bad touched it. Did the spicy no good touch it? Tell them. Tell them Libby with the mayo. Nobody knows what you want unless you tell them.
A crash course in everything.
In everything. I don't sleep in clothes. Should I die as I was born. Should I chill, I should be reminded of the chill of being alive. Should I fail to fall asleep, I know my prayers have been answered. I drive an old car. The new ones these days are far too safe. Should I forget my mortality, I should be punished. Should I take for granted the factories who made me, I should lose my way. Should the roads freeze, I will remember how alike the roads and I am are. I bless the roads. Should I forget how alike the roads and I am, I should suffer the road's fate. And should the roads suffer my fate, they should learn to appreciate the chill of being alive, and not forget the dreams that led them astray. My name Gomez. My name Gomez. Who you? Nice to meet you. My name Gomez. Who you? My name Gomez. Going vacation soon. Take family to Cayman Islands. My name Gomez. Good time.
My name Gomez, bought dozen roses, wife turned on by flowers. My name Gomez, ooh la la. My name Gomez, grade A steak on the grill. I make a steak for me, it's my birthday. My name Gomez, 72 years old. My name Gomez, not much time left, choking on steak bone, going blue. My name Gomez, bye-bye. My name Gomez, buried in the ground, no coffin, just in dirt. My name Gomez, getting eaten. My name Gomez, just a spirit now. Timeless, energy, and no body. My name Gomez. I'm an angel?
Two of
100,000
100,000 billion
poems.
poems.
At 3:30 I gathered up the cooks. Confident, though we'd not prepared a speech, all eyes were patiently on Billy Books. The crowd forgot, but I could not unteach. I glided over the antique parquet and watched chaos take over the galley. I voted aye, but the clouds voted nay, so we did retreat to Billy's Valley. Some songs were sung and some old films were shown. Billy sang the wrong words, what a blunder. The cooks in unison let out a moan. We toasted this night in warmth and wonder. We strolled to the dock and Billy set sail. I glanced at the moon, my holiest grail. Hyacinth Gyoza.
Hyacinth Gyoza.
Your hair is dry but feels wet on my fingertips, and your arms are full of my weight, but not my spirit. I can speak, but it is not really my voice you hear, and everything I know tells me I've done wrong. When I gave you hyacinths, I did so because I did not want them, and there you were without them. They called you the Hyacinth Gyoza, and you, wonderful you, took their words to heart. And they were right, for a little while. In fact, even now they might be right, because for all of my pretty riddles and long ways round, the object you can exist outside of me, and my reckless criminal charm forevermore, be me dead or alive. I still can't explain the feel of your hair, but I shiver imagining the touch. Fear. I'm not afraid of anything, but I am afraid of that. Perhaps because it is no thing. In the same way, you might ask, is possession a thing? Is compassion a thing? Am I a thing? All the things in the world couldn't prepare me for just one that. Perhaps, too, I am afraid of much, in ways fear is given to inspire change, but fear as a crushing and debilitating intruder is a guest only of that. Looking up at this unconquerable foe, and the sneering that which summoned it, I take one step toward my death, and 2 steps back. Rivers. We talk about rivers and how they make us feel, but as we've been in various rivers and nowhere else, in no swamps, in no lagoons, in no lakes, in no great puddles, let's avoid talking about other bodies of water, about creeks, about oceans, about swimming pools, about hot tubs, and stick to what we know, who we are, what we want, where we're going, why we love.
Souse.
I have spent nights as Richard shouting, "My kingdom for some of that horsey souse." I have looked Henry in the eyes, passed him the cigarette, and discovered from his wheezing that it is not Henry at all. "Some of that horsey souse, some of that horsey souse, my kingdom for some of that horsey souse." Some bootlicker I keep near will promise some soon, maybe tomorrow when the haze has cleared. But he does not understand the cruciality of now.
How to draw a
How to
cartoon
draw a
gorilla.
cartoon gorilla. Listen here and I'll show all, the north, south, west, and east, the steps for guaranteed success to draw my favorite beast. Choose your colors black and gray, a third you shouldn't need. Then visualize in the mind's eye this ancient monkey breed. You see it hunched on all four fists, yet level not its back. For should taut be its lower limbs, its arms would have some slack. The slant table inspires your shape, so sketch the legs and top. Only lines for now will do, this shape is your first stop. A bulbous head does extend from the neck and shoulder zone, so plop an ape head thereabout. My, how the beast has grown. You're on your way, you've got the form, this primate's taken shape. Without the basic lines, we cannot draw this holy ape. It is safe to get specific now that we have legs and head in place. So conjure up an attitude you wish to see on its face. 2 big ape eyes, 1 big ape nose, ape upper lip beneath. And in the big open ape mouth, 2 big white rows of teeth. Make 2 teeth sharp, you must address that some gorillas kill. They need their weapons to survive, which, of course, they will. You're drawing not some common beast, you're rendering the king. The gorilla is the jungle's god, and its endless praise we sing. Now you'll furry up its arms, make them huge to show the mass, but add no hair unto its front, chest and tongue should shine like glass. About this time your gorilla should, if you've dutifully drawn, look much like a gorilla and exhibit elegance and brawn. You're free to tinker as you wish, this is after all your own, but these basic steps are all you need, and all I've ever known. I've drawn countless apes in my time, and now you know the moves, so draw gorillas every day, with time quality improves. Should ever again you wonder how a cartoon gorilla can be drawn, well now you know the verse it takes, so see above and recite along. A packed lunch, full protein, full pain. I take my crow Jaleel to go, a lesson learned with more in tow. It's tiresome to learn so much so fast. I pack it tight and later might, when all is wrong / all is right, devour all the wisdom I've amassed. By Lamos. Today would have been my quinceañera, had I survived the flood. They throw no parties here in heaven, at least not like the ones we had back home. As I began to grow, I knew I was growing too fast, and as the rain began, I felt the soils of my heart saturate. I still practice the dances and dream of God's great drought. Snowball. There at the car dealership, the girl's family held the bat mitzvah party. Most of her friends were there, including the girl from a private school who had worn too much makeup since she was 10. Nobody could touch the Corvette in the middle of the room, but the surrounding tables offered great views of the deep red convertible, to be shared with chips and salsa. The circuit DJ invited the group to Snowball, which allowed our hero to steal a bridge, a chorus, and a verse's worth of time with his hands on his prize's waist. They liked each other. They were attracted to each other even, and this at 13 when both of their faces were in their in-betweens. He hid his braces, she needed braces. They both dressed respectfully and brought gifts that weren't gift cards. The DJ announced the next Snowball and the boy returned to his seat. He needed a moment before he could function again. After a round off, he found himself with the bat mitzvah girl, with whom he was happy to be able to share in this event. She didn't need braces, and she dressed respectfully and was her usual woozy self.
Our hero looked over the now woman's shoulder at his love, distantly holding the Asian boy, about whom it had been rumored, because he'd only been seen outside of school twice, that his mother wouldn't let him attend events where girls would be. Earlier in the night, the hero had joked that the Asian boy's mother might feel it more important that he be exposed to nice cars, thus making up for the threat of female corruption. The joke didn't make much sense, but it had been a consistent source of chuckle for much of the night, and a welcome distraction. Only this time, thinking of the Asian boy and of his mother made him sick. She should have kept him home. By the next snowball, the entire room had been engaged, leaving a free-for-all. Our hero approached a girl positioned directly in front of his heartache, hoping she'd glean from this something she had not, or at least giving her the opportunity to intervene and come correct on a few key, painful fronts. An hour or so later, when it was time to go, the hero commented to his love how shiny the wheels of the Corvette were, and how bizarre it was for this night to be here at all. She agreed, naturally, and said goodbye. As she walked away toward the boy with the long tongue, the second longest in the grade, she thought about how shiny the wheels of the Corvette were, and how bizarre it was for this night to be here at all. She kissed the boy with the long tongue and thought, how bizarre it is for this night to be here at all.
Beef,
Buffalo
gyoza.
Down here with them. I couldn't tell you where they live, but I'm down here with them. They've got the friends to prove character, if you squint at character. They've got the pants to show shape, and trust you'll want the eyes wide. I'm foreign in charmless ways, and this land is godless, but not lawless. And it's not for lack of knowing the laws, it's lack of jaw and root. Head on a swivel, to the left a spicy gyoza, to the right a ritual gyoza, and directly in front of me, where I've directed a lifetime of focus, a plate of buffalo gyoza, sauced but not drenched, with covalent attention, native.
Out of the tango.
Out of the tango. When two sinners dance, they both think they're leading. Only after will we be able to say who in fact was. When two sinners dance, there's far more in motion than whatever false limbs and unscuffable shoes we see making dizzying, uneven waves. When I dance, I know you'll be looking at me. Don't stop. You have no idea how it makes me giggle to watch you watch me, with some of my 1,000 eyes. And even to think you may not see me see you watching me, I giggle some more. I asked the chaperone for a dance. Earlier in the night, he'd scanned my ID and patted me down for explosives at the door. He checked my pulse with his crooked nose, looked up and ushered me in the direction of this tainted watering hole. He didn't show me the vial, but he knew I'd noticed. Walking around and tracking how well everyone moved, how genuinely well their bodies synced with the music, I couldn't not approach the man standing still in the corner who already knew something to the effect of who I was. I imagine he and I were boring to watch, for the best. I took the lead. I was sure as he was that he'd done the same. He was practiced, I was not. He was ruthless, I was hurt. And we played each other, layer by layer, sinking beneath the hardwood together, dancing lower, leading ourselves there. He didn't miss a step, so disgustingly tarnished and damaged, and he didn't miss a single step. I kept up, and I took strides and turns he found unfamiliar, I thought. When two sinners dance, the end of the song doesn't signal the end of the dance, nor does the end of the night. They're chained together in this war of attrition that continues until one of them has become so frail and gaunt that he may slip through the shackles and return to the floor a marionettist, not frail and gaunt as he appeared, but healthy. Tarnished, damaged, but healthy. From somewhere above, I could not see. He pulled my chains. He would not leave me for dead. That's not his game. His games hurt more, if for no other reason than they're not games at all. and I was to be punished for having taken the lead at some point. I was sure I had. We sunk down in our dance, and it ate at me how he'd reascended so seamlessly, and how the chains continued through the ceiling above me. He knew what I needed, not that he cared. It had been what he needed that brought his smile when I showed up, that had encouraged him to first take my hand. He left notes here and there, or outsourced them, and tightened my restraints daily. He tasked his woman to sneak me snacks from time to time, and reminders. He didn't mind the idea that he'd one day come down to a room ruined, to a boy ruined. He'd been leading the whole time. He showed me the vial. I'd approached him. I'd extended my sentence willingly. The notes, the snacks, the silence, the pain, the temptation, the rage, and the regret. I'd extended my sentence willingly. There was no fine print and no trickery. I'd approached him. And then, on some morning, I'd either slept through the night or I had not. If I'm being honest, I couldn't say which. In crude, faded black, atop the stairs on this Hilton Hotel's pad, you're paid up, get out. Questions to be asked later, if ever. I knew by then I had not been leading, and to take this one final direction would set me free. Over and over I'd extended my sentence, so just get out. I'm paid up, just get out. I needed no more nudge, and packed up my car. The house looked different in the rearview mirror. I wasn't sure how I'd found it in the first place for its lack of markings, and for a moment I considered turning around to see if it was the same place at all, maybe taking another sip from the watering hole to compare. A sip for the road. I didn't know how long I'd be, and my stomach had proven resilient enough. I quickly dissuaded myself from another foolish decision and drove downtown, where the sun was brightest. Honky tonk. The Night of the Living Dead was not impromptu. If anything, it was overly planned. There were promoters and their friends, and caterers from the luncheonette, and a network of buildings prepared. A series of shuttles had even been proposed, but the nodes were condemned to walk. A trip around the world in 10 hours, and around the ages. While the places and times themselves could offer multitudes, including everything but a place to sleep, they were, more or less, murals in front of which a doomed treasure hike would tease on. There were tears and commands and trouble, wrapped in a tortilla. When the dawn invariably came, solitarily, it wasn't just a frigid room that signaled the new season, just as the lack of mirrors didn't help illuminate the wretched and obvious abandon of time.
The root
veg around me. For years I thought radishes and rutabaga were the same. As it turns out, they're not the same, and there's far more than meets the eye. When I look at the nighttime darlings on the street, or the party boys pissing away someone else's money at the Cosmo, it never occurred to me, but occurs to me now. Maybe they're not radishes at all. Frankie. The name of my hero's Francine. She serves as a merchant marine. I miss her like hell, and her stories as well that remind me of all that she's seen. The Sophias. You must check your dignity at the door, and risk never getting it back at all. The Sophias have but disgust in store. The wise and mature can be such a snore, but save themselves the wicked short-lived thrall. You must check your dignity at the door. The turnings down can be a loathsome chore, volleying back and forth the smarmy gall. The Sophias have but disgust in store. You'll keep your head, you'll go home soon, you swore, not expecting to love feeling this small. You must check your dignity at the door. Forget tonight the ones whom you adore. Try your best to run or hide or stall.
The Sophias have but disgust in store. No mercy, no matter how you implore. Tomorrow you, today you will appall. You must check your dignity at the door. The Sophias have but disgust in store. Selling
self.
When the producer asked how I described my sound, I reached into my backpack and grabbed a CD for him. He kept his arms folded, leaving my arm outstretched, gripping my donation. But what does it sound like? The only thing I could think to say was what I sincerely felt. That it starts like a rock album, it plays like a rock album, and it ends with the truth. Arms still tangled in stubborn power, he asked who my influences were, and it occurred to me he might have meant musically, but I took it upon myself to answer the more interesting and telling question. If he keeps his arms folded after this, I'll feel no shame in walking away.
Leader
toes. Some days before his cremation, the detective imparted on me a curious truth. In his peculiar register, which has since taken residence in the recesses of my subconscious, he let me know that in the lifespan of a mystery, it isn't its solving that makes one feel most human. Rather, it is finding a clue and being given an opportunity to follow. La terre. Dans mes rêves, j'ai pu prendre. Une passe glisse sans interférence. Mais je ne le confondrai jamais avec le vol. Et n'oubliera pas les promesses que j'ai faites avec la terre. String. Together they studied the string, barbarous and the longest of its kind. They suggested back and forth what could be bound and what they could trust to remain free. After not too long, they each began to see the world as strings, unable to ignore the fibers in the earth beneath them and the birds above, and valued more than was due the spindling and the sinuous. O pancreas. Two old makers I know well, who know not the tales I tell, sit and suffer silently in pancreatic hell. O achy stain, you rotten bruise, brought on by genes, brought on by booze, I pray for fast recoveries for these two old Jews. I don't wish you pain, I never would, and yes, I feel misunderstood, but I love you both and curse your blight, and wish to be the son I should. I'd pass your pain from you to me, I'd suffer if it set you free, I'd live with you and nurse you back, dutifully your chickadee. If this hell should be your end, I promise you my life to spend in fearsome opposition to this beast with which you must contend. But for now you ought to know, despite your pain, and yes, although I've been a menace as of late, I always keep your love in tow. Ignatius. All he ever wanted was a son named Cessius, a precious prince he could protect and teach backwards, beginning with all the lessons he hadn't learned, and never ending. He rose again yesterday, yearning for years back, not to retry or replay or reverse, but to have and watch, to absorb and ultimately turn him to mush. Yesterday he talked to me. He didn't know I was listening, nor did he know of my existence, but spoke directly to me. Or was it his son he spoke to? Or himself? Or his army of hopes, the nascent flicker or two strewn amongst the dead? I think Ignatius spoke to me. I know he did, for I heard him do so, and I cried with him and walked through unfamiliar boulevards he sketched with precision, and reached the destination, as he considered it to be.
And in his words I could swear he'd given life to the pavement and the sun alike, to the vast and the varied, and to the sparse. He spoke in fertilizer, and his words passed through the cracks of the wicked wall and made their way to the everything of the world behind it. There a sun, and there an anchor, and there a new set of eyes to replace his God-given ones, wasted and decayed, but not unable to pass as working eyes. I could swear I grew as I listened, and I felt the distinctive quality of a dream where I suddenly knew too much that I hadn't been granted the dignity of learning. I considered evaluating myself for maturations of perspectives and values, and perhaps the younger me would have interrupted the journey to do so. I didn't need to check. I was sure I'd grown, and felt some flavor of joy, some profundity drenched in relief as I watched father and son, and I had no doubt that all things were possible through the way I know Ignatius, though Ignatius does not know me.
Vlasic shower, Vlasic bath.
Vlasic bath. I remove a layer of velour and find more velour. I'm sweating, as I do in times like these, in temperatures like these, in company like this. And you're sweating too, but yours looks like a beautiful ongoing molt, as you are a cycle of the sun and earth, and your skin evolves with the rotation of the planet, whereas mine looks like the dirty sweat we do because we have to. If I can make it another 6 hours, I'll be able to refilleth my cup freely for the night, and I don't intend to drown myself, but if I spill, then I spill, and the spillage mixes with my sweat and creates the illusion of a dogged and unfettered man, as opposed to the clumsy yokel. I peel back another layer of velour, to be discarded at a later time, for now it can rest at my feet. If you hadn't noticed, I'm neither here nor there. I recognize where I am, though I did not choose to be in such a place. You may recognize it. We may recognize each other. We choose each other, but are not together. Looking back at your skin, your forehead, I realize I haven't seen it before. This skin of Theseus that God has been cultivating and refreshing. I didn't know you when, and I never will have.
Scritch.
On the very same night that I shaved my big balls, I received notice that the ozone was unsafe and I was forced to stay in. For the best, I suppose. I felt an itch I'd rather not address in the presence of anyone at all. The lady I'd been talking to was tattooed all the way from her ankles up to damn near her pussy. I have this piece on my hip and one below my navel, and one behind my ear, all quite modest. In my dream last night, I watched her holy creation lips wrap themselves around my messianic staff and strangle him into submission. Some sort of torture film I didn't feel afraid of that may well be taken from some future well of reality. Some post hoc docujournal I'd never forget, because I once read a book on immersion therapy written by a woman who'd written another book about sensory isolation that I liked very much, and brought up in conversation whenever possible. In my dream, I couldn't tell what her tattoos said, inasmuch as a tattoo will say, but mine were clear to her. I remember her describing them to me, asking me if her descriptions were right, and me reckoning with the fact that her descriptions were somehow greater than the pieces themselves. When I awoke the next morning, I'd missed a call from her, which is odd because usually I'm a light sleeper, and I have one of those phones made in Apple's trial of phones with ultra-loud speakers. These phones never went to market, but I participated in a test and was allowed to keep one. She left a voicemail checking to see how my asthma was, if I was affected, if, in my opinion, the warning we'd been given was reasonable, which I was to have an idea of beyond just assuming it was rooted in science. I waited until I'd had my teas before calling her back, but as soon as I clicked the icon to dial, I thought she might be gardening, and it would be best to call her in an hour or so. I hung up and looked down at my pants, which I'd hooked outward with my thumb, at a night's growth, highlighted by some mild but not inconceivable scratch marks.
Standards. You let him bust in you, but not me? These are your standards now? His bust is gray and dusty. Mine is nectarous. It can kill spiders. He hasn't seen the world the way I have, lest you forget how I've seen the world. He hasn't suffered as I have, nor has he ever been alone, lest you forget how I've suffered and how I've been alone. He isn't keen enough to sharpen my toothpicks, the ones I know it turns you on to watch me twirl about my mouth. Even when they've gone a bit dull, I can still draw blood like he never could.
Them smells I love
so much. After my shower this morning, I took a hammer to a sewage pipe outside, trying to rescue those smells of yours I washed off like an idiot. I covered myself in my own diluted shit and scooped up handfuls of watery something, kneeling to sniff out traces of you in the sludge. Indeed, your scent conducted some sorcery on me, complete with a finishing spell to forget it altogether, and perhaps in turn be driven mad trying to remember. This elusive dragon must be here, somewhere. Nothing can disappear forever, and for that I know I cannot afford to disappear too, so if nothing else I have this menacing hope to stay by my side. I dig deeper into my backyard and lick a trace of something that looks like it might contain a hair of yours, which had I known had snuck home with me, I'd have stowed in some unbreakable display. It tastes like everything but you. I think maybe I might have left some second-hand hint on my steering wheel, although as I recall I glided home with no help from my machine. I opened the door, dripping mess and ruining the interior, as if anything will ever matter again. Stout. Glugged and drugged, with teak and starch, from time to time I take trips to this cave I know, where I have seen danger but am not bothered. To some, I am the observed danger, and I am not bothered. I glug and glog and shrug, and I consider reading, but my temples are not in time with the beat of this postmodern shit I like. I put on music, but my temples are not in time with this banging garage rock. I accept conversation, and it's far too easy to appear relatable, and I almost feel guilty, and when the guilt passes, I'm tempted to give away the secret, which to some is all that will activate the thrill. But not me. I can keep a secret. I prefer to. I glug. I am aware of this human body in my singular mold, beating out of time, and it's all very okay, I think, to spend another arrhythmic night in the cave. Discomfort. I create discomfort out of thin air. I summon it by breathing. I walked around in love, or something like it, and plans, and buckets of positivity. I dance around with naivety's cousin. We two-step around a burning heap of awareness. I piss on it. I know something about the healing effects of piss. Ball don't lie, they say, and whatever I've repressed or hidden out of fear rolls around like a demon marble, tapping me on the heel, sneering. I'm creating discomfort out of the space I was cursed to take up, sure to learn it is zero-sum, and on tape delay. What goes around comes... Wait, what exactly goes around? What's orbiting me, mocking me? What's incapable of lying and suffering for it? I'm a man, growing older by the second, and I walk around an empty dance hall looking for a partner, pissing all over the place. I knew a thing about piss and how sometimes you do it without thinking. It starts with existing and it ends in a few simple words. I started existing, then stopped. Now I can't be sure. Would you like a dance? I ask, thinking I've found a partner. But no. It's just my reflection in a puddle of my own piss.
Great job, everyone. We got like 10 poems left.
Kingdom.
A servant in your own kingdom, it's too late to recompense for the destruction of the bases, as well as it's too late for the bases to be rebuilt. Merrily you sweep and cook and survey and remind yourself, it is still my kingdom. It is still my kingdom. You dust the throne and imagine the thrill of sitting in it once again. For now, the only plushery you enjoy is the satin panties beneath your robes. Satin soft enough even for a king, like you, but never to be worn in repose, as there are too many in need of your servitude. Echoes. Quiet car ride. A long one. You're a liar. No surprise there's no one beside him. No surprise at all. He sits with the echo. He dodges a few blows but cannot win. We are what we repeatedly do. A phantom finger rolls down the window enough for the echo to eject itself into the ether, and the car is quiet once more.
Hubble 2.
Hubble 2. I am the Hubble 2. As I orbit the Earth, it's tough to make anything out but a few people. It's possible, entirely possible, I do not see them at all. But this high-powered lens between my eyes gives me something sweet to focus on before I crash and crumble like a cookie.
Bowling at
Bowling at
$2.99.
$2.99.
You won't do it.
You may hit your target once, you may even make your shared touch a habit, but it is not forever. All things good and bad are transient, like our bodies and our moods. Remind yourself, the opposite of perfection is not imperfection. Perfection, I promise you, has no foil, only different costumes, unfairly perceived in each. Steps away from greatness is still great, and the only mistake you've made is telling yourself you've made a mistake. Your perfection has persisted, with or without a claim, and will live in you until you decided to try no more.
Imam Baptiste.
Before anyone's read the script, Imam Baptiste has become it. His blood transfuses, and he cannot be found until he is bled out and shriveled into his earthly shell. They say he sleeps standing up. Some say he does not sleep at all. To the latter, we might suggest paying closer attention to his breathing patterns, or reconsidering what we think sleep to mean. Imam receives plaudits, but not for his suffering. His suffering is hidden, securely stowed behind this uncanny face you yourself make. Before you can ask what's wrong, you have to ask yourself the same, and there's enough there to meditate on that you'll forget yours is the only problem you can hope to solve. Scale. An ex measured me once. I asked her not to tell me what she found because the problem with labels isn't that something will be mislabeled, but that its label will remove from the object what makes it and nothing else, as no word has only been used only once. She told me I should know, that I should be proud. It bothered her that I speak so descriptively of her vagina, but refused to let her do so of me. I don't refuse her the right, I just don't want to know the number. You praise me and paint me in your words, she says, but it is the only way I know how to let her know what her parts mean to me. I tell her my language is how I show my passion, and I don't mind the fancy of her imagination. I encourage her imagination. Her imagination even turns me on. But a measurement is the death of the imagination, and strips us both of this particular freedom. She asked if she could tell her friends. I told her her friends could use their imaginations.
The girl's color.
I don't know what color this girl is. I think this not to be her fault, nor mine, but I do think blame is zero-sum, and a price must be paid, even if no answer is offered. I have known 10,000 white people. I have known 10,000 brown people. I have known the spectrum of humanity, but I still don't know what color she is. It doesn't matter. It matters. It doesn't matter. It matters? I should say everything matters. Every tic-tac and toe marked in the sand. Every couch that has been used too much and is no longer comfortable. Every fish trapped in a display aquarium at the dentist's office. So I should like to know what color this girl is, and use it not for any judgment or presupposition, but knowledge for knowledge's sake, and taking the scraps and crumbs of lives lived, and piecing them together into insights and experiences. Trusting your instincts is great until you're reminded of how stupid we're born, which you will be reminded of, and you will stupidly be amazed by. So I should like to know what color this girl is, with no questioning the intent and agenda. Maybe she can tell me. Maybe I'll have to ask twice. But tomorrow I should know what color she is, and if not tomorrow, then the day after.
Warning.
Welcomes. On the night I caught 11 or so yellows in a row and made them all safely, I had to question who was programming my world. That parable where God ends up scolding the narrow-minded man, shouting, "Motherfucker, I sent 3 boats." Is it a parable or a joke? I don't mind being shouted at from time to time, if it is an informed shout, and if I am uninformed. As I whizzed through intersection 6, I thought about my friends in 8th grade who abandoned me in unison to leave me alone with a girl I was meant to kiss. On the 10th, I spent most of my passing time under a red glow, and I came close to forgetting it all. I say I don't mind being shouted at, but it can be so hard to tell who is informed and who has just been gifted power and a booming voice. Here I lay, alone in this dark and unnatural sunshine, wishing by now I could tell which shouts to mind.
As we may
never stop growing. If land and water were reversed, the oceans, forests, and the desert lakes, would we still be at war? As we may never stop growing, we may never know. If the wars were to stop, what would become of the space we make for wars? As we may never stop growing, we may never know. If you and I and them and they can cross eyes and understand and see neither pride nor shame in blinking, what does it say about how we've been viewing one another? As we may never stop growing, we may never know.
This is the way
my world ends. Part 1. There was nothing in my head. I kept it so clean I can be sure, and I remember the bellowing echoes I'd hear when I'd tell myself secrets no one ever asked about. I glided around, face up, begging to be read, even skimmed and then returned. I'd turn myself for you, save the binding and all. Passionate is as passionate does, or is it the other way around? It is never the fault of the obsessed over, nor am I ready to blame the obsessives. There's far more to life than a deed and a job. I know this. I viewed my checklist nightly and kept buried the incomplete lists I never wrote but still felt compelled to finish. My objects were not solitary. In fact, they commingled too beautifully. All this beauty in one projection, and we start to wonder why nothing else compares. I watched and waited and practiced and created a world of which I could be king. I could have been. I would have been. My coronation was coming, I knew, but how soon? Each morning the sun rose on another day for someone else. Classically not an issue for a guy like me, but for the workers I'd contracted to build my castle I could not delay further, and my urges and instincts were, and always will be, faster than my level head and twice as persuasive. In the dead of that day, more end of day, depending, I became myself again, and felt, for the first time, and I could not say, correct. A look can last forever, As can 20 minutes, as can your scent, burned in my nostrils like cave paintings. Forever is not nearly enough. I've never thought less and felt so absolutely, and so certain. My tears are ashes from a fire that could never burn you, and does now live inside you since I made it so. Still, chest down, you shook the nothing out of me, and lured the angelic monster who eats himself into nothing but on your command will appear to save me, or something like that. Fully lucid and fully disposed, I regret only the timing, ain't that the way it goes? Never the message. Part 2. There was nothing in my head. So filthy it was, I can't be sure. Although, had there been anything drenched in filth so deep, you wouldn't be harsh to call it nothing. I'd turned. Into, onto, out of, away from. I'd turned to the monster, now in full form with self-made oaths. He suggested I take a new name. I could not. He suggested I find a new path. I obliged. He told me to move on. I remained silent. He knew I'd hurt him. I shot myself out of a pistol, and I read the monster's lectures and studied his outlines. He insisted that now I'd never be alone. To his credit, he was right. Together we built a wardrobe and filled it with capes and cloaks and masks and blindfolds. I adopted myself. This was no I born of me. This was a selection I'd pledged my devotion to. Pledged my devotion. They grimace, a few of them, hearing this, but in this springtime, the sun shines for me. The rain absolves me. The lightning threatens, but does not dare strike me. Who do I kid? There's no rain here. The monster told me what it could do if it were to find me, but in the desert there is no absolution. I live amidst the snakes and soil, dry and dying, thriving and dying. The unfamiliar mountebank fits in all my clothes and lives in a parade route for himself. He is the judge, jury, and grand marshal. His humbug stings in retrospect, but he plays the part so cunningly. Pathetic. I'd lied before, the way my ancestors lied their way to humanity, but never for fun. Now, drowned in poison, it's impossible to know what is fun and what is survival, and if survival can be relative, and if coming out as a relative winner and objective loser can be fun. We call it fun. The manual said so. Desperate times don't call for desperate measures. They don't call for impulsive measures. They call for acceptance, or indifference, as we call it. Selective. Desperation is what we were constructing in our sleep, it appears. I couldn't see for the light, and the monster kept me preoccupied, his sleight of hand not seamless as much as full of vengeful and sensual vibrations. Judge not lest ye be judged. I'd made up my mind from the first day. I showed up at his door. He didn't deserve my loyalty, and nobody deserved my honesty. I lent a stranger my clothes and my blood, and watched his sloppy scoops of chicanery go unminded. Everything is too easy until it's not. It was all too easy, and then it wasn't. Failure can be quite easy to swallow when no one sees, and easier if it isn't the only thing they don't see. Drowning is only dramatic as one watches, either unable to help or defiantly letting you die. I'd been filling my own pool with viscous sludge, not quite toxic, but impossible to tell from above what's happening within. It's so warm, and it allows me to still hear myself, though I'd never scream for you. I'd take the same tone you'd coached me to, and try, even, to cheat you until the mutt grabs hold of my tail and whips it up to show me everything you'd written on it that you'd kept from me. In a way I cannot describe, I've always loved your handwriting, and reading these stringent, hidden pages brought out from me a bliss of sorts. Desperate times don't call for desperate measures. They don't make much of a sound at all.
Scraps. To imply some of you are dogs and feed off scraps is not an insult to you.
Most of us are dogs. Some scraps taste better than the meals from which they originated. The following poems are scraps. To serve a dish I believe in, I must keep a thematic consistency and grounded truth to the message. The dish served here was 100 poems, working together as a unit to affect you in a specific, meaningful way. That takes nothing from the scraps, equally loved by me as poems 1 through 100. To be repurposed is not to lack purpose, but to find purpose through secondary means, and to assume you, the reader, couldn't handle more than 100 poems would be disrespectful. I offer these various residual poems for your enjoyment. Grown from the same tumult as their brothers on the previous pages, I hope these scraps affect you too in their own little way. They are not officially part of the 100, but they are officially part of my soul. Silent fun. Desert nights, bloody streets, rocking clubs and alleys behind them. I can go days without making a sound, and I can die in the sound, and I can even kill the sound, but most of the time, the sound and I know to stay out of each other's ways. Dad-eater. I remember watching as the woman I sort of knew gave air to our baby girl, and never feeling prouder, never more like an animal. I lost my breath, laughing and smiling at her first steps. I wept at her first communion. She scored her first basket and I danced around the rec center. I could have run through a wall. I comforted her during her menarche. I drove her to the movie theater to meet that one rascal bitch with the greasy mohawk who I now have to call son. You can't pick your family. I hear the human discretion that's made me swirling between my ears. I've never felt more like an animal. Two little dinosaurs are going on a date. The plan is to see a movie and maybe get ice cream after, if they're feeling it. One dinosaur looks like he is dressed for the beach, and the other for an evening at the theater. This does not mean they will not vibe, it just underscores who they each are as dinosaurs. Punchacles. I once met a man who told me that I was violating ancient moral laws and gave a mini lecture on some old Greek scholars and philosophers he knew. I responded with my favorite scholar, Punchacles, the learned and violent Grecian legend who wrote and studied and debated until he had had enough and would then knock his arguers right out. I told the man the tale of Punchacles and he replied, "There is no such scholar." I punched him in his smug and stupid jaw and suggested to him that he study the teachings of my idol, Punchacles. Cigar Man. Look, Papa, at the way you wear your glasses, the way you hold your clipboard, the way you pimp out your daughter. I won't deny you you're a businessman. I won't deny you that. I won't deny you've made something. I can't say where I sit isn't real. I won't say you're not basically aware. I know you'd find offense in that. The way you've odored your world, the way you've skirted the rules, the way you hide behind safety as a low-class criminal. Yell at me again and I'll show you a criminal. You're lucky you breed nasty or I'd show them what you really care about. Das Phantom. Das Phantom moves in next door and sets up his stereo. A bangin' hi-fi with thumpin' bass. He's got a fish tank full of beans to be cooked at a later date, or eaten raw, as he tends to do based on my observations. His face is supple, his hands are supple, his chest is supple, his feet are abominations. His mailbox is full every day, as I've found from my daily rummages through his mailbox. Initially, I searched for a specific letter, but soon grew distracted by the buildup. Bear's in the back, but the dog's still gotta go out. It cannot be said that nature will not take over, that forces we know will dictate what even our delusions know we will never control. In the trees and amidst the stars, we are remote beings in saturated camps. The dogs we live with, whom we feed and brush, must expunge. And can you blame them? Spare your surprise. Can it? Save it for some judge or another, when the laws of man hold the consequences. The dogs must go. There are bears out back, but the dogs still gotta go. Never mind who's back, whose land and whose air. What possession means in the court means nothing here. The bears seem bigger this year. Perhaps they've grown. The dogs have changed nonce since we found them, notwithstanding their trust, which tonight they could afford to couch. There's no jury in the back. There's the world and the wall which separates us. There's no bailiff beyond us, and the only judge recognizable is the same one who sentenced us to all this in the first place. To all of this. There are bears in the back, sure, but the dogs still gotta go out. Pin screen. I submit myself and see the metal contour that my hand presents. No answers. My shit stinks like rancid gash, the sweatista in me working a double and unable to hide for its announcement. I am powerless against earthly chemistry. The sweatista sings a pallid tune he learned from someone's mother and reaffixes his mask around his cloven bourbon ears. I myself have no answers to anyone's questions, but I've answered a few of my own. And after this many years and that many walks upstairs, this feels like a not insignificant victory. Uh-oh. The weirdo braced himself for non-sexual impact that was to be sexual to him. The girls were a year older, some 2, and he wouldn't dare make eye contact, even with the one who once laughed when he made a joke to his friend that he didn't realize she was close enough to hear, and didn't expect her to have even acknowledged his language. One of them backed up into him. He grimaced. One tried to take the ball off him, which he evaded, but in doing so caught a hip check. He appeared frightened of this sensory bombardment, and unsure of which god to which he should pay tribute. He was a pure boy, and selectively hard-working, but he was a lonely boy, and aiding one would not aid the other. One of the girls shot water into her mouth from a bottle a few inches from her mouth, and the cascading misses inked her shirt clean, just below the collarbone on her left side. She wasn't beautiful, but oh, how she was, and the way she could have been from anywhere but was, in fact, from here, he marveled. How could he not? His affected focus and affected friendships and affected happy scowl made his glasses look like black construction paper, and he'd feel the guilty haunts of an evening perversely mistargeted for some time, but wouldn't come away with nothing. Kneel, Chuck, kneel. To be is to be a beast. To grow a beast. To shrink, to grow a beast. Fat man, skinny man, tall man, mid-man, get down. You must be your own beast. Down to your knees, I beg of you, and allow God to do his dance on you. Up, Chuck, my friend, and release. We must purge this toxic delight from your virgin bloodstream. You deign the purge, but the exodus will save you. Your bell can no longer be tricked. I know the trick, Chuck. Kneel, beast. A flautist. Saying your name makes me ill. I can think it and keep my guts at ease, but only just. Something about the shape my mouth makes to release the sound reminds my nerves of those nights we did nothing but exist. And the sound itself triggers the survivalist in me, the evolutionary voice warning in no uncertain terms, to stay away or die. See shoe, wear shoe. Splintered foot, desperate midnights, 2 feet greater than 1. See shoe, wear shoe, Venus in flight, faster than we'd been told to believe. 19 and Dutch, our faces chairs, wipe the chowder off your beard and prove your resolve. In your home, you've hung renderings of your own footprints, but the real things our friend Eaton Y has in his, and your renderings have nothing on the real things. See shoe, wear shoe. Your friends make bad music. Was where I weren't, friends of amigos, celebrating Daddy's Day with raclette and punch in Camden, where else? Your party favors laces, reviles modern breastfeeding, bans magic for the children, races ponies and leaves before the bill has been paid. As told, I wait long after, until I'm told to leave. See shoe, wear shoe, wondering what time it is everywhere but here.
You have now finished the book.